Well, good day and welcome to our next lesson in our study of the book of Mark. This is in the last weeks of Christ's life on earth, and he is spending his time going between where he is staying in Bethany and back to Jerusalem. And just earlier in this chapter we saw how he was coming in from Bethany, and he saw this fig tree. And he went to get some figs off it to eat because he was hungry. The tree had no figs, and he cursed the tree and saying, "Let no one eat figs from you again." The tree was in full leaf, but it had no fruit. He went from there into the temple and disrupted the temple by turning over the money-changing chairs, by turning over the activity that was taking place in the temple. Most of this activity was not right. Money changers, exchanging sacrificial lambs, deciding which ones should be good and which ones were not. There's a lot of graft involved in all of this. And now Jesus had gone back to Bethany, and now on the way back in, they looked at this fig tree, and it had completely withered from the roots up. This is an analogy of what had happened in the temple. The fig tree had great leaves on the outside but no fruit. And the temple had great persona outside, it colonnades, great beauty, great prestige, but inside it was corrupt, and it really had nothing to do with God. And this is what he was saying. The analogy of the fig tree was to say that the temple itself was nice on the outside, but inside it was bereft of any kind of holiness. And then he goes on to this next section. After Peter said to him, "Look at the fig tree which you cursed has withered away." Then Jesus went on and answered and said to them, "Have faith in God. For assuredly I say to you, whosoever says to this mountain, it be removed and it be cast into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that these things he says will be done, he will have whatever he says. Therefore I say to you, whatever things you ask when you pray, believe that you receive them, and you will have them. And whenever you stand praying, if you have anything against anyone, forgive him, that your Father in heaven may also forgive you your trespasses. But if you do not forgive, neither will your Father in heaven forgive your trespasses." This is sort of, and it seems like a strange place to put this prayer, this little teaching on prayer, right after this evidence of the fig tree being cursed. But we have to remember that the disciples were still struggling with all that was going on. They still did not fully understand what was going to happen, or they did not fully accept what was going to happen. Even after all they'd seen, even after all they'd been taught, even after all they had experienced, they still did not really grasp the significance and the finality of what was going to happen. Jesus knew he was going to be leaving them very soon, and they would be more or less on their own as far as being on the earth is concerned. And he wanted to give them an idea of how to really connect with God and really connect with himself after he had gone. He had shown what he could do. He had shown his power. He had shown what he could do to people and to the fig trees, and also what he thought the temple would happen to the temple. And he wanted to have some kind of teaching for the disciples so that they would be able to carry on after he left. So he gave this small teaching on prayer. And there are really 5 different sections here about prayer that we should look at. And Dr. John MacArthur really put this into perspective in his teaching, so I'm going to follow his lead on this. If you take these few verses, there are 5 aspects that he says prayer really consists of. The first is that the prayer has a historical component. There is a factor of what's called remembering. As Peter says, remember, said to him, look, the fig tree which you cursed has withered away. Remembering what God has done and what God can do is part of all our prayer life. It says in Isaiah 46, verses 8 to 9, it gives this idea that remember this, show yourselves, recall to mind, O you transgressors, remember the former things of old. For I am God, and there is no other. I am God, and there is none like me. Remembering is also the main part and an idea in Psalm 77, 78, and Psalm 145. Remember what God has done for you in the past, remembering what God has done for others in the past. This is a part of prayer, and it's a way to get yourself really involved in the right track, the right frame of mind, to remember what God has done in the past for others and for yourself. So there is an historical perspective to prayer. And this is what he says, Peter, remembering, said to him. This is the first part of the prayer lesson taught in this little section. The second part is there's a theological part to prayer, and it's faith. Have faith in God. Trust God. If you really can't trust God, there's not much benefit in praying to a God you can't trust. In 1 John 4:15 it says, whosoever confesses Jesus as the Son of God, God will hold in his heart. He is God. There are many other aspects in this. It says if you come to God, you must first believe that he is. In 1 John 3:14 it says, if we ask anything according to his will, it will be done. We have to have faith. In John 13:14 it says, I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. So we have to have faith in what God can do, has done for us, what he can do for us. And if we're going to pray to God, we have to have faith in God. And this is what he says, have faith in God. And this is where he says, for assuredly I say to you, whosoever says to this mountain, be removed and be cast into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that these things he says will be done, he will have whatever he says. Therefore, what we're talking about here is an analogy. He's not talking about taking an actual mountain and moving it, but the mountains in our lives. Those problems in our lives, those problems in our existence. If we have faith in God, then he will help us remove those mountains from our paths, from our lives. And this is what this is referring to. There is also a spiritual component in God, and that's the belief in God himself. Have faith, believe in God. Whoever believes that these things what he says will be true, he will have whatever he says. Therefore, I say to you, whatever things you ask, when you say, believe that you receive them, and you will have them. Faith and belief They're much the same thing, but there are different aspects to it. So we have a historical part of prayer. Remember, have faith, believe. And then there's the physical, the practical component, asking. And it says in James 4:3, you do not ask, you do not receive because you do not ask. Maybe God already knows what we're going to ask. Maybe He already understands what we need, what our requirements are. But it also says we have to ask. And therefore it says, whatever, I say to you, whatsoever things you ask, when you pray, believe that you will receive them. Have faith that you will receive them. And you will have them. Now there is a caveat to this, that what you have to do is have this request in the will of the Father. God is not going to actually do something just because you want to satisfy your own greed, your own desires, your own wants, your own whatever it is you need, you think you need yourself. He's going to do it according to the Father's will. And He's going to do it if you ask sincerely, with faith and trust, and remembering what He has done in the past. And the last thing of this, of course, is what He says in the last part of this, forgive. If you are praying, if you have anything against anyone, forgive them, that your Father in heaven may also forgive you your trespasses. If you do not forgive, neither will your Father in heaven forgive your trespasses. And if you're praying, requiring, and in need of something, and you have something against another person, this will hinder that prayer. There's a parable about a servant who owed the king a sum of money. And he went to the king, and the king forgave him of the sum, because the servant had asked him sincerely if he could be relieved of his debt. However, there was also another servant that owed this first servant money too. And when this second servant came to the first servant would not forgive him his debt. And when the king found out about this, he rescinded the forgiveness that he had previously given to the servant. The idea is, if you don't forgive others, then your Father in heaven will not forgive you. So remembrance, faith, belief, asking, and forgiveness are all the lessons taught in this little section about prayer. Have faith in God, ask, believe that you can receive without wavering, without doubt. Believe, ask, and forgive. This is what this section is about, and this is what Jesus was telling His disciples in one of His last days on earth, as a teaching to help them get along and to understand what He was trying to tell them all along, at a time when His time on earth was short, and He knew He'd be leaving them soon to go back to the Father. So this is this little section. We'll get on to the rest of this chapter next week. Thanks again for watching, and bye for now.